In the previous part, you built up a new app and implemented collection view functionality completely from scratch. Since you already know how to get up and running, I've provided a starter project called Emoji Library this time around. If you open up the project and start in main.storyboard, you should see a view controller embedded in a navigation controller. Inside the view controller, I've added a collection view and sized it to fit the scene just like last time. Inside this collection view, there is a prototype cell with a background color and a label that has been centered vertically and horizontally. The label is used to display a placeholder emoji. The prototype cell has a reuse identifier, emoji cell specified in the attributes inspector, and a corresponding custom class set in the identity inspector, which is right here. Like you did last time, I've added references to all of this in code. In viewcontroller.swift, you should find a reference to the collection view. And in emojicell.swift, I've added an outlet to the label along with a reuse identifier. There's also an emoji detail controller.swift that has been wired up for you to implement a detail view where users can examine each emoji in detail. To wrap it up, I've also provided some data to work with in emoji.swift. Here you will find emoji that I painstakingly copied into arrays and grouped by category. Awesome, let's get started. Just like the first time around, you're going to start by creating a layout object. A collection view's collection view layout property is of type UI collection view layout. This is an abstract type whose job is to determine the placement of cells, supplementary views, and to organize layout in general. You can't use this class directly though, and you need to create a subclass that provides much of this information. Earlier, the subclass you used was UI collection view compositional layout, but this time you're going to use UI collection view flow layout. A flow layout implements a line-based breaking layout, which means that the layout object places cells on a straight line or a linear path and fits as many cells as it can along that line until it runs out of space. When it does, it creates a new line and continues the layout process there. You can use a flow layout to create grid-based layouts quite easily, but you're not limited to that. Flow layouts can be configured either programmatically or using Interface Builder. This is certainly an advantage over compositional layouts if you prefer to work in a storyboard. Flow layout objects expose several properties to configure the appearance of the content to arrive at the desired layout. When these properties are set, they're applied to all items equally inside of the layout. We start by configuring the size of the items. This is achieved by assigning width and height values to the item size property, available both in code and through the attributes inspector in Interface Builder. The important thing to note is that these item sizes are then applied to all items in the collection view. This is what you'll want 9 times out of 10. Later, we'll talk about how you can implement layouts where items can be of varying sizes. Once you have the item sizes locked down, you can then use the flow layout to specify the minimum spacing between items on the same line and on successive lines. Keep in mind that this spacing is the minimum spacing, and in practice, the layout object may increase spacing to a value greater than the one you've specified. This can be confusing if you're not familiar with it, so here's a quick primer. During layout, the flow layout object will add items to the current line with the minimum amount of spacing that you have specified between each item until there's not enough space left to fit an entire item. After this process, if there's extra space at the end of the line, the layout object will increase the inter-item spacing until all items fit evenly on the line. Once the items on the line have been set, layout flows onto the next line, and the same technique is used for inter-line spacing. If all the items are the same size, the flow layout respects the minimum spacing values, and all items will be spaced evenly from the items in the next line. If the item size varies, then the actual line spacing between the items can be different. A flow layout also allows you to configure section insets to tweak the margins of your content. Section insets are a way to adjust the space available for layout cells. You use insets to insert spaces after a section's header or before its footer view, two things that you haven't covered yet, and to insert spaces around the sides of content. Using section insets and inter-item spacing, you can control the number of cells that appear on a single line. That about covers what you need to know about flow layouts. As you can see, there are some fundamental differences between compositional and flow layouts. Flow layouts have no concept of groups, for example. So while you can build the exact same layout using both, the underlying concepts and attributes that you use are quite different. Next, let's configure your first flow layout in Interface Builder.